Roll Tide, everyone, and welcome to Tide TV This Week, brought to you by Thompson Tractor. I'm Roger Hoover, joined by Kira Goldstein. And Kira, roll Tide.
Roll Tide. What's going on this week?
Well, Kira, we were looking forward to the Alabama-LSU game, but unfortunately it has been postponed. The game's been postponed due to a combination of positive tests, contact tracing, and individuals placed in quarantine within the LSU program.
Per the SEC, because LSU has a game tentatively scheduled for December 12th, the opportunity to reschedule the Alabama at LSU game will need to be evaluated. The rescheduling of games on the remaining SEC football schedule may include December 19th as a playing date.
Coach Saban did not have a press conference after the game was postponed, but he did participate in the SEC coaches teleconference on Wednesday. Here's what he had to say about the postponement.
Yeah, well, we just came off an open date, and I thought we made a lot of progress, had good practices, got some guys healthy, and, we're certainly look forward to playing a game. But I think that, we kind of expect disruptions during this season, so how we handle them is probably the most important thing right now. And what we like to try to do is try to keep our team in some kind of rhythm relative to how we practice and how we continue to try to improve to finish this season.
Despite the postponement of the game this week, the Tide continued to practice. Team practice is normal on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and even though there was no game on Saturday, the team did not take the day off. Tide practiced on Saturday as well. Coach Saban said he was trying to keep the team in rhythm and also keep them in their same routine.
Alabama will have a second straight bye week with the postponement, so let's look ahead at the rest of the Tide schedule as it stands right now.
Alabama's next scheduled game is against Kentucky on November 21st. Kickoff for the matchup with the Wildcats is scheduled for 3 p.m. on the SEC Network inside Bryant-Denny Stadium. As usual, Alabama will take on Auburn on the Saturday after Thanksgiving. This year's Iron Bowl matchup will take place in Tuscaloosa. The matchup with the Tigers is usually the final regular season contest, but this year the regular season finale will be against a very improved Arkansas team. The Tide travels to Fayetteville to take on the Razorbacks on December 5th.
After that matchup against Arkansas, Alabama has a bye week scheduled for December 12th, and then it will be the SEC championship game in Atlanta on December 19th. Will Alabama have a game on that off Saturday on December 12th? We will have to wait and see how the SEC office handles all of these cancellations. And not to bury the lead, Roger, because the postponement of the LSU game is a huge deal, but there's some other pretty big news, and that is we have a new number one in the rankings this week.
Yes, we do, Kira. We have a new number one in the Associated Press poll, and it's the Crimson Tide. Alabama captures the number one spot for the first time this season. Alabama had been gaining ground on Clemson really all season long and was just 2 points away from the top spot last week.
With Clemson's loss to Notre Dame this past weekend, that opened the door for the Tide. There are no questions about this poll. The writers made the Tide their number one by a huge margin. The Crimson Tide received 59 of the 62 first-place votes and is ahead of second-place Notre Dame by 83 points. Behind the Tide and Fighting Irish is Ohio State at 3, Clemson drops to 4, and Texas A&M enters the top 5 for the first time this season.
The SEC has 3 teams in the top 6 after Florida's big win over Georgia. The Gators move up 2 spots to 6, and the Bulldogs fall 7 spots all the way down to number 12. Auburn is the SEC's 5th top 25 team, with the Tigers remaining at number 24 this week.
With the Tide moving up to number 1 this week, this marks the 13th consecutive year that Alabama has been number 1 at some point in the season. That is the longest streak in Associated Press poll history.
The Saban era certainly has been dominant, and we're not too far away from the first college football playoff rankings of the season. First rankings will be released in just over a little bit of a week, and the committee will tell us their thoughts on the 2020 season so far on the Tuesday before Thanksgiving on November 24th.
It was National Signing Day for every sport except for football this past Wednesday. When we come back, we'll have a rundown of the newest members of the Alabama Crimson Tide family.
Tide TV This Week, presented by Thompson Tractor, the exclusive provider of Caterpillar heavy equipment and genuine cat parts for Alabama and Northwest Florida. Visit ThompsonTractor.com for more information. The University of Alabama, where legends are made. Ford, for great offers on F-150, see your local Ford dealer. Proud sponsor of the Crimson Tide.
Welcome back. The Alabama men's basketball conference and non-conference schedule was recently released. Alabama will play 9 non-conference games and 18 SEC games.
Alabama opens the season on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving here in Tuscaloosa as the Tide hosts Jacksonville State. Then it's the Maui Invitational that'll be played this year in Asheville, North Carolina. Alabama opens that tournament against Stanford on November 30th, and then will play either North Carolina or UNLV on December 1st with another game to be determined. That'll be against another team on the 2nd. The Tide gets about a 10-day break and then returns to action in Atlanta on December 12th against the Clemson Tigers.
Alabama finally returns to Coleman Coliseum on December 15th as the Tide hosts Furman, then Houston on the 19th, and their final non-conference game of 2020 on the 22nd as Alabama hosts East Tennessee State. Here's what head coach Nate Oates had to say about the Tide's non-conference schedule.
Jacksonville State's one of the best. I mean, he does a great job coaching. We played them at Buffalo, scrimmaged them here last year. Year before I got here, they beat Alabama in one of the close scrimmage. So that's going to be a tough game to open. Maui's obviously got a great field. You know, Stanford's really good, got a lot of talent, one of the better teams in the Pac-12. And then, you know, possibility of playing North Carolina, UNLV, and then whoever in the third game. But then the Houston game's huge. All right, they're, you know, Kelvin Sampson's one of the better coaches in the country. Kids play hard, give great effort. I liked the series when we signed it because we want to develop toughness. They're going to be one of the toughest teams in the country every year. I want to play those type of teams to expose us if we're not as tough as we need to be. So excited about that one. The Clemson one in Atlanta, you know, playing an ACC team, non-conference, going to be good. And then, you know, Furman almost beat Auburn at Auburn last year. They gave us a good game here. That they're another well-coached mid-major team. So even the mid-major teams that we've got, East Tennessee State, you know, one of the better mid-major programs in the country. There's not one easy game on the schedule, which is good. I mean, if they reduce your schedule by 4 games, like let's make sure they're all quality games. They're going to make us better and get us ready for SEC play.
Alabama begins SEC play on December 29th as the Tide host Ole Miss. Alabama is scheduled to play one more non-conference game after it begins conference play. Tide will take part in the SEC Big 12 Challenge on January 30th as they travel to Norman, Oklahoma to take on the Sooners. The final regular season matchup is scheduled for March 2nd as Bama will host the Auburn Tigers in Coleman Coliseum. To see the Tide's complete schedule, visit RollTide.com.
Wow, it is exciting to see that the season is just around the corner. I mean, it's just a couple of weeks away.
Yeah, we certainly are excited. It'll be here before you know it, Kira. Head coach Nate Oates and the team got some more good news this week. Wednesday was National Signing Day for every sport except for football. November 11th was the early signing period for Division I basketball, and the men's squad signed 2 on that day.
Jashawn Holt, a consensus 4-star prospect, is a 6'6" shooting guard from St. Francis Day School in Roswell, Georgia, and he signed with the Tide. Alabama also signed Langston Wilson, a JUCO player from Georgia Highlands College. Wilson is a 6'9" power forward that is rated as the number 2 overall JUCO player by 247 sports.
Nate Oates and his staff can still add 2 more players, but they signed these 2 on Wednesday. The Alabama women's basketball team also added a player to their squad for next season. Taylor Cullinan from Dallas, Georgia, signed to play for Christy Curry and the Tide. Cullinan is a 6'3" forward from North Paulding High School and was All-County Player of the Year.
Head coach Dana Duckworth and the Alabama gymnastics team added 3 on Wednesday. Corinne Bunnigan, a USA Junior Olympic National Balance Beam champion from Ramsey, New Jersey, along with Jordan Paradise, a 2-time USA Junior Olympic National Championship qualifier from Tampa, Florida, and Lily Hudson, a junior international elite from Fleming Island, Florida, signed with the Tide for the fall signing period.
The Alabama soccer team added 9 members to their team on Wednesday. Scouting internationally for the top soccer talent, Alabama dipped into the talent pool in 2 countries and 4 states, bringing in players from Austria, Canada, California, Michigan, Texas, and Virginia.
Shea Eggleston, an outside hitter and the 2019 Tennessee Gatorade Player of the Year, signed to play for head coach Lindsey Devine and the Crimson Tide.
The Alabama swimming and diving team also added 1 new member to their squad. Mateo McKelly from Omaha, Nebraska is the newest member of the Alabama swimming and diving team. George Husak and the Alabama men's tennis team, they went around the world to add their newest player to the team. Enzo Aguiar from Melbourne, Australia will join the Alabama men's tennis program. Coach Patrick Murphy and the Alabama softball team added 4. The 2020 Gatorade Tennessee Player of the Year, Aubrey Barnhart from Pleasant View, Tennessee, signed with the Tide. Jenna Lord, the 2019 7A Offensive Player of the Year in the state of Florida, and also Callie Hemlin from Three Rivers, Michigan, also signed. Hemlin holds the Michigan single-season home runs and runs scored records. And Dallas Goodnight, a top 5 player in the 2021 class by multiple outlets from Georgia, is the Tide's 4th signee. Goodnight is an outfielder and also 2-time Gwinnett County Player of the Year.
And lastly, we get to Alabama baseball. Coach Brad Bohannon added 11 new members on Wednesday's National Signing Day. In all, there are 4 infielders, 2 outfielders, 6 that can pitch, and 1 catcher.
While Coach Bohannon and the Crimson Tide have been busy putting together this signing class, they've also been very busy on the field. The Tide wrapped up their first fall practice schedule with the annual Fall World Series. As we go to break, let's take a look at some of the highlights from the Crimson and Gray's Fall World Series, brought to you by Legacy of Hope.
Gray on 3, 1, 2, 3, Gray.
Tide TV This Week, presented by Thompson Tractor, the exclusive provider of Caterpillar heavy equipment and genuine cat parts for Alabama and Northwest Florida. Visit ThompsonTractor.com for more information. Ford, for great offers on F-150, see your local Ford dealer. Proud sponsor of the Crimson Tide. The University of Alabama, where legends are made.
Welcome back to Tide TV This Week, brought to you by Thompson Tractor. Roger, we just went over all of the additions to the Crimson Tide, but there's also plenty going on right now for Alabama athletics.
Certainly are. The Alabama swimming and diving team opened their season this past weekend in a big way against LSU in Baton Rouge. Despite not being able to play football this weekend, the Alabama swimming and diving team really dominated the Tigers on their home turf. Crimson Tide men's team defeated the Tigers 194-104, while the women also dominated the Tigers 183-117.
Alabama remains on the road for its next outing, traveling to Knoxville, Tennessee, to compete against both Tennessee and Virginia on November 19th through the 21st.
The 9th-ranked Alabama women's golf team, they wrapped up their fall competition this past weekend at the Liz Murphy Fall Collegiate Classic in Athens, Georgia. After starting the final round at the University of Georgia golf course in 9th place, the women carded their second lowest round of the season, a 2-under par 286 performance to move up 4 spots on the team leaderboard to finish the tournament in 5th. Angelica Moresco led the Crimson Tide individually as she finished 10th at +1 for the tournament.
A little closer to home, the Alabama men's golf team wrapped up their fall season by hosting the annual Jerry Pate National Intercollegiate at the Old Overton Club in Vestavia Hills this Sunday through Tuesday.
Alabama was led by Wilson Furr and Thomas Ponder, who both finished tied for 19th overall with identical scores of 1 under par 209. As a team, the Tide finished 11 over par for a 12th place finish.
Let's take a look at some of the highlights and hear head coach Jay Siebel's thoughts on the tournament.
People are starved to get back into some type of normalcy, and this week we had some. You know, parents got to watch their kids play for the first time this semester, basically, and so it was great. And then we had our fans here, and you know that's what's so disappointing. They were ready to give us energy, and we just didn't get it. We didn't give it to them, but we had a lot of people, had a lot of support internally, externally, and it's why Alabama's a special place, and golf has been special, and we're thankful to everybody who did show up, and that was probably the brightest part, to see people coming in, you know, willing to be temperature tested just outside. Let's go watch the Tide play, and so that was great. I think our guys came out with an attitude to be good today. We just weren't. We didn't make any birdies hardly, and in the golf course just gets a little bit difficult when you don't make enough putts. So, but the guys, they did a good job. They didn't mope or they didn't feel sorry for themselves. We made sure of that. But in the end, golf beat us pretty good, and we got to get better. What team are we? We need to become more consistent, and that starts with me. And I look forward to getting back after it when everybody gets back to school.
Welcome back. There was a graphic circulating social media this past week that showed that Alabama has a starter at all 22 positions currently in the NFL. In fact, the Tide is the only university that has a starter at all 22 positions currently, which I think is very impressive.
Very impressive indeed. That gives us a lot of options to choose from for our NFL Players of the Week. Let's take a look and see who our Crimson Tide and the NFL Players of the Week are this week. They're brought to you by BBVA.
Hey, Roger, guess what time it is?
What time?
It's Tua time.
Ha-ha!
In his second NFL start, he looked a lot more comfortable this week than in his first start. Tua completed 20 of 28 for 248 yards with 2 touchdowns. Tua also added 7 rushes for 35 yards as the Dolphins defeated the Arizona Cardinals 34-31 as Tua improves to a 2-0 as a starter.
2-0, very good to see that.
Yeah.
And Minka Fitzpatrick helped the Pittsburgh Steelers remain undefeated. With the Dallas Cowboys up 19-15 and with the ball at the Pittsburgh 5-yard line, Minka intercepted the Cowboys' pass in the end zone, a big game-changing play that helped the Steelers ultimately pull out the win and remain undefeated at 8-0 on the year.
We also give a special nod to Jerry Jeudy this week as the Broncos receiver hauled in 7 receptions for 125 yards and a touchdown. That was Judy's first 100-yard game of the season, and the 7 receptions were also a season high for him.
Certainly impressive for Jerry Jeudy, and the Alabama soccer team hit the road this past Friday night for their final regular season contest as the Tide took on 15th-ranked Auburn.
Freshman Felicia Knox was the star for the Tide. In the 36th minute, Knox scored the only goal of the match when her long-range kick got just past the outstretched hands of the Auburn goalkeeper. Knox's kick bounced off of her fingertips into the goal for the game winner as Alabama defeated Auburn 1-0. Goalkeeper McKinley Crone and the Crimson Tide defense suffocated the Tigers' offense and held Auburn scoreless, posting its first shutout of the season.
The win was the Tide's first at Auburn since 1998, and the win last year over the Tigers in the SEC tournament with that first back-to-back wins over Auburn since 1999. The victory was also just the second true road win over a ranked opponent in Alabama soccer history. Roll Tide to that.
Roll Tide, Roger. Alabama competes in the SEC tournament this weekend as the Tide enters as the 11th seed. Alabama takes on LSU at 6 Central on the SEC Network on Friday. We'll have a recap of the Tide's performance in the SEC tournament next week.
The Alabama volleyball team picked up their first win of the season this past weekend as the Tide split a 2-game series with Georgia in Athens.
Alabama won the first 2 sets, 25-23 and 25-19, before Georgia bounced back to make it 2-1 with a third set win. Tied at 23 in set 4, Aaliyah Wells had 2 huge blocks in a row for the Tide, and that would give Alabama the 25-23 win in set 4 and the match for the Crimson Tide's first win of the year.
Now, unfortunately, Georgia rebounded in match 2 as the Bulldogs won that one 3-0. Alabama will now play LSU for a 2-game series this Sunday and Monday in Tuscaloosa. Sunday's match will be carried live on ESPNU at 1 o'clock. You can also catch Monday's matchup on SEC Network Plus starting at 1.
The Alabama men's tennis team wrapped up their fall season at home this past weekend as they hosted the 4 in the fall. The Tide welcomed LSU and Vanderbilt for a 3-day tournament.
Tide finished a very strong 32-10 overall, including 20 singles and 12 doubles wins. Jeremy Swetner and Alexei Nesterov were co-champions of the tourney's Houndstooth Draw, while Vincent Retke and Ricardo Roberto were champions of the Crimson Draw. In doubles, Fisher and Nesterov won the Houndstooth Draw, while Swetner and Retke claimed the title of the Crimson Draw.
Stay with us. We'll have our plays and players of the week coming up next.
Saves it on the back row. That one fired over. Madeline St. Germain with the serve for the Tide. Blocked over, and that'll do it.
Right foot shot high, deflects in by Maddie Prohaska, and the Tide is on the board. Felicia Knox from distance breaks the ice here in the Iron Bowl of soccer.
And welcome back. Those were our ATI Plays of the Week. Now let's take a look at our Players of the Week, brought to you by Payless Drugs.
Soccer's Felicia Knox gave the Crimson Tide a big win over in-state rival Auburn. The freshman scored the only goal of the game against the 15th-ranked Tigers. Her goal came in at the 36th minute of the first half as she powered it past the Auburn goalkeeper for the 1-0 victory. The score was the second goal of her career. A big goal for Knox and the Crimson Tide as they upset 15th-ranked Auburn. Knox was selected to Top Throw Soccer's National Team of the Week.
And Aaliyah Wells would help the Alabama volleyball team get their first victory of the season. The sophomore totaled a season-best 11 kills, also led the team hitting .318 with 5 blocks, including 2 in the 4th set of the Tide's first match of the Bulldogs to give Alabama the win 3-1 sets to 1 over Georgia.
Those are our Payless Drugs Players of the Week.
Thanks for watching. We hope to see you right back here next week. Roll Tide, everybody.
Roll Tide.
This has been a presentation from Learfield IMG College.